My name's Chuck, and today we're going to be taking a look at this, the AK12. So, we're going to be taking a look at the Black Viper AK12 Airsoft version. But before we do that, let's have a little history lesson. Now, I'm sure we all know that the AK12 is the updated version of this thing, the AK47. And the AK47 has been modernised over the years. It was modernised into the AKM in 1963. In 1974 it was modified into the AK74, and so on and so forth, the AK12 being the latest incarnation of it. But before we go into that, let's have a bit of a history lesson. Now, I'm sure most of you know that Mikhail Kalashnikov, who designed the AK-47, was a tank commander in the Second World War. And the story goes that in 1941 he was injured when in his T-34 tank, and whilst he was in the hospital he heard some troops complaining about their weapons, specifically the fact that they were using more suitable to the trench warfare of World War I type rifles that were better for long range accuracy than they were for close range engagements where you needed a rapid rate of fire. And it's often thought that Kalashnikov's inspiration for the AK-47 was either the STG-44 or this thing, the MP-40. But the truth is that when Kalashnikov was designing his original prototype, his inspiration for it was actually the M1 Garand. However, when he came up with his prototype in the late stages of World War II, his design, which looked a lot like the M1 Garand, was rejected in favour of a design from Simonov, which again also looked like the M1 Garand. And that Simonov rifle was the rifle that the Soviet Army adopted. But the Soviets were smart enough to realise that Mikhail Kalashnikov had some talent, and so they took him out of tanks and started working on rifle designs. Now at that point he was out of the war, and the war had ended, and so he was well able to get hold of rifles such as the STG-44 and the MP-40. And the prototype that he came up with in 1946 looked a lot like an MP-40, although nowadays we would look at it and recognise that it was a prototype of the AK-47. It had a wooden stock, wooden foregrip, but it had a folding metal stock like the MP-40. The Soviets liked what they saw when they saw that prototype, and in 1946 they decided to go ahead with producing it, and eventually what we ended up with was this thing, the AK-47. However, the AK-47 didn't go into large-scale production until 1953, and around that time it was adopted as the main Soviet Army rifle. And over the years there have been a lot of companies that have made copies of the AK-47, principally the Chinese, who in 1956 came up with Type 56. It's very similar to this AK-47, except it has a built-in folding bayonet. Now, throughout the Warsaw Pact and lots of other countries, there have been over 1 million AK-47s produced, well over 1 million AK-47s produced. Most of them actually without license, and it's interesting to note that the AK-47 wasn't actually copyrighted until 1997, so it wasn't illegal to make copies of it right up until near the end of the 20th century. Now, as good as the AK-47 is, times have changed, and modern warfare requires more accurate rifles. The AK-47 was the Warsaw Pact's main rifle, and it was a rival to this thing, the Armalite, in this case an AR-15 version of the Armalite. We all know that there are M4s and M16s and all kinds of things. Now, the difference between the AK-47 and the Armalite is one, caliber. This is a smaller caliber, and two, the manufacturing processes. This thing is far more finely toleranced than the AK-47, but the slap tolerances on the AK-47, whilst they make it not quite as accurate as the M16, are what accounts for its legendary reliability, because the slack tolerances mean that if it gets some grit in it, it doesn't jam. However, modern warfare nowadays is of the kind where you are not sat in trenches for weeks on end. Very, very short operations, you can easily make it back to base, you can be supplied easily, and so the ability to keep your rifle clean in a dirty trench is less important these days than it would perhaps be when the AK-47 was designed. However, it is still a terrorist favourite because they do find themselves hiding in caves. However, to modernise the AK-47 so that it could be on par with things like this, the SIG 556, required more than the modernisation of the ilk of the AKM or the AK-74. And so what we see is the modernised version, which is the AK-12. Now, the AK-12, whilst it looks a lot like the AK-47, is very different. It has a screw-on barrel that can be changed to different calibers. That was at the request of the Indian Army, which used to be a Soviet client state. And so there are several calibers available for the AK-12. What we also see is rail adapters for the ability to put things like optics on and lasers and torches underneath and all this sort of thing. We also see a collapsible stock, more like you find on the M4. We also see that it has a improved fire selector. The AK-47's fire selector was around about here, and that's kind of difficult to work. So the new fire selector is more reachable with your thumb and forefinger, and it has 3 modes on the real AK-12. It can fire semi-auto, fully automatic, and it can also fire a 3-round burst, although on this Airsoft version we've only got semi and full auto and safe, so it's not an exact replication of how the real AK-12 works. What we've also got on the AK-12 is an improved suppressor, flash suppressor up on the front, which has ports on it that fire gas out and keep the thing more under control when you're firing full auto. So it is more accurate than the AK-47 or the AKM or the AK-74 or any other variants like the Chinese Type 556. Magazine's very, very similar. Now, another interesting thing about the AK-12 is that, unlike this Airsoft version, the AK-12 is ambidextrous. You have fire selectors on both sides. So you've got one there, you also got one there, and of course you can see on this thing, because it's the Airsoft version, it hasn't got the fire selector on the other side. Nor does it have a folding stock, nor is it collapsible like it is on the real AK-12. The real AK-12 has the ability to fold the stock either to the left or to the right, and you can also change the ejection port and the cocking handle to the left or the right hand side. So the AK-12 is fully customizable to be left-handed or right-handed. Now obviously this Black Viper AK-12 is a fairly inexpensive LPEG, low-powered electric gun. In this case it was I think $69.95 including postage from a BB gun site. There are these things available in the US where I think it retails for about $49, so if you can find somewhere to buy it if you're interested in it that will actually post it to the UK, then you may possibly be able to get it cheaper than how I paid for it. But for 69 quid, it's not bad. It weighs 3.2 pounds, I think, which is fairly light. Yeah? This means that when you put stuff on the rails, it's still going to be a fairly light gun. Now, it's a shame that the stock doesn't fold and doesn't collapse, but having said that, it is quite nice when it comes into your shoulder. so I can live with that. The stock itself is where the battery belongs. The battery goes in this part here. You can see that you can slide that out of the way, and it comes with an 8.4 volt battery. The stock itself can actually come off. There's a little button on the underside there. If you pull that, you'll see that what you can do is, with a bit of effort, take the stock off. Yeah? Now, if you look very, very carefully, you can see some electrical contacts on there, and you'll see some electrical contacts on the back of the gun. That's where the battery is connecting to that gearbox. I'll just pop this thing back on. You'll see that it goes on fairly easily, or at least it does. I'm looking in the right direction. So, that's the stock. It contains the battery. Shame it isn't foldable, but there you go. I guess what you could actually do is, because there's a lot of room in this bit here underneath the barrel where there's not actually a lot going on in there, I guess what you could do is you could open it up, maybe fit a battery in there, have it wired to the front, and then cobble together some kind of folding stock arrangement. Might take a bit of work, but probably not impossible. Now, you can see that because this is a UK rifle, it's two-tone, but rather than that silly orange or blue colour, it's this translucent ABS plastic. And the vast majority of this rifle is ABS plastic, but it's fairly solid. It's got some metal bits on it too. Metal bits are the trigger, the magazine release catch. This rear sight is metal. That's another thing about the AK12. On the AK47, you have the sight there. They've moved it back on the AK12. This means that it's slightly better for aiming. Other metal bits, the gas tube is metal. That bit's metal. The little ramrod underneath the barrel is metal. The barrel itself is metal, although there are some plastic bits, notably the flash hider. The flash hider is plastic. It's a bit of a shame that actually, because it means if you ding it into a wall, there's a possibility it could break. So if you do get this, you need to be a little bit careful about it. The magazine is plastic. That's a high cap magazine, a little windy wheel on the bottom. I think it's 350 round capacity. Could be wrong on that, but it's a high cap magazine anyway. Pistol grip, ergonomic pistol grip. An improvement on the AK-47. It's quite a fat grip that actually, but it does have the little finger cutouts for you there, so you can get hold of it. Nice thing about that is it's got kind of a sort of rubberized feel. It is plastic, but it doesn't feel plastic. It feels more rubberized, so that's actually quite nice. Now, other things worth noting: you've got rail there, you've got rail there, you've got a rail there. Those rails are plastic, but they are well secured. There's big ass screws in there, yeah. So these things aren't coming off. They're not rattling around or anything like that. Now, the real AK-12 top receiver hinges here. So there's a release button on the real AK-12, and this thing hinges up. On this, what you've got is solid plastic. So that's a bit of a shame. It means that it's going to be hard to get to the internals. Now, with regard to the internals, this is a cheap airsoft gun, so it has a plastic gearbox, but you can see through this translucent plastic that it is a V3 type gearbox. Now, this means that there is the possibility that you could open this up and upgrade it. Yeah. Now, how easy is that going to be able to be achieved? Well, we can't open this top receiver part, but what we have got on this side is we have black little crosshead screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 of the things, and maybe a couple there. And so you could actually unscrew that and separate the two halves of this, and you would be in good shape to be able to get to the gearbox. So that means that £69 gun, maybe 40 quid for a V3 gearbox, so you're into just over 100 quid, and you could have something that's fairly nice. You can see that this thing has, you can just about make it out, has got what looks like an aluminium barrel. It may possibly be brass, but it looks more like alloy to me. But one thing to be said for it is that that is a very long barrel. It looks to me like the actual barrel ends about there, maybe, perhaps about there. It's sort of difficult to tell looking down the barrel, so, you know, I think we're about there where the barrel is. That means you got 10-inch maybe, something like that. So it's quite a long barrel on the thing. Fire selector, 3 position, quite solid actually. nicer than the M4's fire selector, which, as I'm sure you'll all know, if you've got an M4, it's easily knocked into position when it's rubbing against you. This thing, not much chance of that happening, so I do like the fire selector on this thing, and that means I'm also not too bothered that it hasn't got a fire selector on that side, because it negates the possibility of it rubbing against your webbing and accidentally going onto safe or going onto full auto. I'm sure we've all done that at some point and realised what a pain in the ass it is. So there you go, the AK12. Now let's have a good close-up look at the thing too, so that you can have a bit of an inspect. Okay, we're back inside. It was a bit windy out there, and what I've done is I've taken the thing apart, and I'm going to give you a bit of a close-up look at the thing here so that you can check it out for yourself. So you can see that it's in three pieces there. There's the rear stock that slides on. I've opened it up so you can see where the battery goes in. There's the magazine, and then there's the AK12 itself. So from the front, plastic flash suppressor, don't ding it into a wall, yeah? From here backwards, metal, including the little ramrod underneath. You can probably see the light shining on that. That is absolutely metal, and it's loose. You can undo that thing, take it out like you can on a normal AK. So it is actually a separate piece that's not molded in there, yeah? You can see metal barrel there, metal gas tube, and that's in good and solid, yeah? No flex on this thing when you put it together, when you put the rear stock on. No wobbling around or rattling or anything like that, apart from your 350 BPs in your magazine, which are going to rattle. You can see, as we track down it, you can see the rail along the top there. Then you can see that is where the top cover hinges on the real AK12. It doesn't do that on this thing here. But what you can see is you can see some molded detail there of the grip. So if you fancied painting this thing black, make sure you got a U-car if you're doing that. Then all that detail is going to start showing up. So it looks a little bit featureless while it's in this translucent plastic, but trust me, the detail is there. I'll just tilt that up so you can see the rail on the bottom. Help if it went into focus. So carrying on, you've got, there is a lot of rail space on this thing, yeah? You can see there the cocking handle. Now the cocking handle is actually non-functional. It's not cocking the thing at all because this is an LPEG, but when you, and I'll just flick that so you can hear the sound, when you pull that back, you can see in there is a little sliding lever. I'm just going to point my finger at it. That thing there, that slides backwards and forwards to adjust the hop up. So this does have adjustable hop up on it. There you go. Right, so moving along, there you can see where the magazine feeds. You can see the magazine release catch there. That is metal. The trigger is metal. You can see the sort of ergonomic grip there with its nice rubberized feel. You can see the fire selector there, the fire selector, 3 position. You can see that engaging the gearbox on the inside, and you can make out the spring at the back of the piston and the wiring there, which is going to the back of the main body of the rifle. And I'll tilt that up for you so you can see the electrical contacts on it there. Yeah, okay, let's flip this thing over and have a look at the other side. Now on the other side you can see the wiring, and that is a cheap ass plastic version of a V3 gearbox, but of course that means that what you can do is you can open this thing up and you can put a better gearbox in. Probably cost you about 40 quid for a replacement V3 gearbox. Add that to the £69.95 that this costs you, or $49.95, and that means for about 100 quid you could have a fairly decent AK12 with a V3 gearbox inside the thing. Flipping it back over the other way, we can see there that you can actually take the thing apart, because there's one of the screws that you would undo to get to the thing. There's another one there, another one there. It's probably about 6 screws to get the thing open. Yeah, so magazine, nothing particularly exciting about that. It is a typical AK magazine, yeah. On the top of it you can see the trapdoor there, where you load your BBs in. You can see where that's going to feed the BBs, and I'll just hold that there for a second so that you can get an idea of where the feed hole on it is on the thing, so you can compare that to your own AK mags and see whether you think that you'd be able to use typical AK mags that you've got on this thing. I suspect you probably could. On the other side you can see Surprise, surprise, it's got a windy wheel, it's a high-cap mag. Let's have a look at the stock in a little bit more detail. As I say, not collapsing, can't take off that cheek piece or anything like that. That is just one solid piece of plastic. On this end here, you can see the electrical contacts that are contacting the ones on the back of the receiver area of the main gun. And then up the back, again, there is some texturing on that, but it is not rubberized. I suspect it probably is rubberized on the real AK. That's sliding down and you can see where the battery goes in. So nothing particularly exciting about that, but there you go. So there you have it, the AK12 in close-up. This is made by Black Viper, so if you do a search for it, you'll find that there is a BB site in the UK that is selling it. That's where I ordered it from. And it came really quickly, within 24 hours, and that was free postage as well, so I was quite impressed with that. If you're in the US, there are a couple of websites selling it. I don't think it's under the Black Viper brand in the US, but if you type in Airsoft AK12 and you're in the US, I'm pretty sure you'll find one or two sites that are going to sell it to you. In the case of the United States, it's going to be $49.95. So slightly cheaper in the States, but there you go, that's what we have to put up with in the UK. Anyway, I've been Chalk. I'm going to go and get a cup of tea because I'm thoroughly British, and I'll see you again sometime for another review of something else in it that might be interesting that comes along. In the meantime, have fun. Bye.